Ibrahim, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Guy. How are you?
I'm fantastic. It's it's interesting. I was only thinking about which way to take this conversation before we jumped on camera because, I had the opportunity to invite Doria onto the podcast a few months ago, and we had an incredible conversation. So I have no doubt there'll be people today who have listened to that. There'll be people today that will have no idea what biogeometry is or have never heard of it. And then I have no doubt there'll be people at the other end of the spectrum that have been doing your work for years. So hopefully we can have a conversation that will support everyone here today.
Well, I'll try to be very simple, even if I go deep in any topic. We'll try to deal with it very simply.
Please do, please do. It's funny. I'll go off on a tangent here because I got your book here. Okay, Back to the Future for Mankind, and I read this just before I did the level 1 course at Christmas time. And today, preparing for the podcast, I thought, I'll be fine. There's no problem. And then I picked up your book this afternoon and started browsing through it again. And I went, my God, did I miss that much? Like, it's so deep and dense in pages. I think I could read it 10 times and get different questions and answers from it all the time. And I will ask you while I'm on this topic, why the title? And you got this beautiful image of the modern city with a pyramid sitting in the background above everything as well. And every time I look at that, I'm like...
Back to a future, and I'm not saying here to the future. I'm speaking about a future. That means that we could have different futures. We are not sure which one is going to really happen. So if we want to have, to have a future to begin with, if we don't want the demise of our race from the earth because of all our doings and the way we have ignored the environment, and that usually leads, when this happens, as it happened in many past civilizations, when you sort of start destroying the environment through whatever kind of civilization you have, the earth will get rid of you sooner or later. A little scratch from the earth is fatal for humanity. So we cannot destroy the bigger being, which is the earth. The bigger being will always find the remedy. And if that remedy is in taking us away, then be it, it will do it. And another race that is more intelligent, that is more environmental friendly. I mean, humanity has built such an ego that it does not understand that ultimate integration with, let's say, the earth is achieving the level of an animal or a bird. They're already totally integrated, because they follow the laws of nature through subconscious. Now, we are consciously driving away from that. If we listen to our subconscious becoming more animal-like, we will integrate with the earth. And what I'm saying is back to a future. That means we want a future, but back, I'm looking at some ancient paradigms that were more intelligent or had more wisdom than ours. So if you had an ancient paradigm with more wisdom, then you get a civilization that continues to thrive for thousands of years. Usually civilizations have a cycle of 300 to 400 years, the cycle of civilizations. But yeah, it's usually, if you take any civilization, it thrives for about 300-400 years. Take the Greek one, the Roman one, and all that. They all thrive for so much. Ours hasn't been so long anyhow. But you go back to ancient Sumeria or ancient Egypt, and you find that it's been there for 3,000 or 4,000 years of known history, and maybe another 10,000, 12,000 of unknown history. So how come did those civilizations thrive for so long? And it's only a change in the perception of humanity that brought modern man into the scene that really ended those civilizations. But so I want to go back to find something in that ancient paradigm to build a new science that will take us to the future, or that will give us a future, because we might not have one. You see, if we are looking at what we're doing now, imagine now we are in the age of information age of modern technology, and we depend a lot on electromagnetic radiation. So we are filling the atmosphere with so much electromagnetic radiation. We're having satellites roaming the Earth everywhere. They're building a shield around the Earth. And one day, very soon, the whole atmosphere of the Earth will become like a sort of a hard disk. You know, a hard disk where everything in there is interconnected. Of course, everybody's going to be happy, you know, because now I can connect from anywhere into the internet. Everything is alive and active, you know. You don't need wiring anymore because, yeah, imagine the atmosphere has all the electromagnetic energy that you need. So everything will be for free, you know, and okay, giving you everything for free doesn't really mean for free. Maybe somebody else is controlling that, but you're getting everything for free. Now, at what cost? What have you been getting for free until now? What we have been getting for free in the atmosphere is life force. You know, subtle energy is full of life force, and the Earth is a being that replenishes us with life force because we are part of it. Now imagine electromagnetic radiation comes into this life force. Anything that moves, you know, a wave that moves creates heat. Motion creates heat, that's obvious. So we do not want to understand, or we understand, but we don't want to acknowledge that electromagnetic radiation of the information age is one of the things that have to do with global warming. I mean, the information age is a culprit in global warming. We don't have to go to, say, fossil fuels and things like that, you know, wanting to put electricity instead of fossil fuels. This is a political move. Political move because they want to, there are some countries in the Middle East and Russia and all that, that control the oil in the world. So politically, if we move to electricity, we're taking the carpet from under their feet. So this is not a really wise way of looking at it. The wise way of looking at it is not to take one problem and put a much bigger problem instead of it.
Create another problem, yeah.
Yeah, because imagine, instead of sitting in your car, I tell you, I'll give you a much healthier car and I make you sit on a stack of batteries. The whole floor is batteries. And I try to convince you that sitting on those batteries is healthier than if your engine is putting out gases through the exhaust. I mean, the exhaust pipe is putting gases outside the car. But the batteries you're sitting on, that's right inside your body. And if we don't take care, we'll kill ourselves with all this electric movements, smart cities and all that. Now, when we spoke about now warming, anything that warms up loses loses water in it.
Yeah.
You know, dehydration happens with warming. So, and life force is in water. So if you reduce the water content in living systems, you end up with depleting the life force of those living systems. And now imagine that the information age is slowly depleting the life force of all living systems on Earth. Now, this is a very, very dangerous situation when you deplete the life force. What happens if your plants uh, lose life force? Depleting life force means reducing immunity.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, if immunity is reduced in plants, what happens there? The parasites that are programmed to take away weak plants. You know, it's like having a box of apples, and then in there you have a rotten apple. You know, I mean, if I find a rotten apple, I'll just take it away, throw it away. Now, what if all the apples rot in there? You'll go and take all of them away. So what's happening now with agriculture is parasites, instead of attacking the weak plants among the healthy ones, it's attacking all of them because all of them are weak. All of them uh, have low immunity. So we come up and put more chemicals. So not only do we have electrical pollution now we have chemical pollution. You see, so the whole thing is a vicious circle that, as modern civilization goes on, it's like we have a time bomb in the age of information that could end life on Earth anytime. That's why I'm saying think with ancient wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Don't imitate them, but think along their wisdom. Make your own new science that's environmental friendly to create a future for yourself. Otherwise, there is no future. And that's about, all that is in the background of the title of the book, you know.
I know, and then wait till you read it. My God, it's changed. It's life changing information, like it truly is. And the thing that I've been contemplating about, and occurred to me as I hear you speak, then, because clearly the world needs to look at what we're doing and start to create in fundamental changes. Otherwise, if the damage might not be reversible in time. Now, from my own experience as a guy from Wales that used to play rugby, that had no concept or awareness to any degree of anything that was going on, because I had so much of my own problems in my life. It wasn't until I started getting into my mid-30s, going within, exploring meditation, and then actually having I don't speak about it often, but I actually had a Kundalini release about 5 or 6 years ago that allowed me to actually explore and feel into subtle energy. It allowed me to expand beyond myself and connect to the greater universe, if you like, and bring that information back. And then I started to have a much more deeper understanding from experience and wisdom than I did from actually just reading from a book or trying to figure things out. So once I started to have these experiences, I became much more open to this information and the things that you talk about, because all of a sudden it makes so much sense. And I guess my own concerns is that people are not, if they're not open to it, how do we get that information across? How do we raise people's awareness to look at this work? Because it's incredible.
Well, let's first look at a bit at the change you went through, because that concerns you and it's the same for everybody. Now, we are a sort of a double being in one being. We have a left brain sensory perception that creates our ego. Our waking ego is a sensory ego because the senses get information, they put them in a data bank, and the information in that data bank is what we are. I mean, we identify with the information in this data bank created by sensory perception. That is a left brain awareness. Now we know the sensory perception is very limited because our senses are sort of geared at very limited areas or ranges of absolute reality. Our sensory perception can only, let's say, resonate with about 2 to 3% of absolute reality. And that is it's a normal thing, because in order to be most efficient in your physical reality, you have to adjust your sensory perception to things that concern physical reality, and sort of put all the other realities in the background. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to function in the physical world if 1,000 other dimensions were intruding in you. You wouldn't be able to function. So we have this sensory ego, which makes me, Ibrahim, and makes you, Guy. This is the sensory ego, the left brain ego. Once the senses shut off, the ego shuts off and we're not there anymore. See? Okay. On the other side, is that all we have in our perception? Only this 2 or 3% of absolute reality? Now think of how your senses work. In order for your senses to work, in order for Guy to be there, the body has to be alive to begin with. You see, if the heart is not beating, sending blood to the brain and all that, you don't have any senses. So actually, the biological functioning of your body happens, it's a precursor to your sensory perception. It is the condition of giving you sensory perception. So if it's not in my sensory perception, if it's a condition from where sensory perception arises, that means it is in the, let's say, extrasensory dimension of my being. So all the laws of nature that run my body, that run my biological system, are not in the sensory area. They're in the extrasensory area that I do not have control on, that I cannot access very easily. And thank God we do not have control on that. Imagine if in your waking consciousness, if in your decision making, you enter into the decision making of the functions of the body. You wouldn't live 3 minutes. You know, they'd have to give you a manual with maybe 10,000 pages. And now, if you want to breathe, how do I take a breath in? You read, and that's in 10 pages. By the time you read the 10 pages, you're dead, you know. So thank God that all the important things in life are in the extrasensory side and not on the sensory side. And that is in your right brain awareness, what we call the right brain awareness, or the intellect of the heart. Now, time and space perception are part of sensory perception. See, our awareness of time space has to do with the senses. You have to have, through your senses, to sense motion. In order to feel time, you have to sense motion. So time and space are related to sensory perception. Now, if you go beyond extrasensory perception, you don't have this time and space. This linearity of time and space, of cause and effect, is not there anymore. Now, unfortunately, we try to comprehend everything that happens in the extrasensory domain, in the universal dimensions, by sort of time stamping them, space stamping them, because unless we put some time-space coordinates in there, we will not be able to understand them and perceive them. So what we perceive from extrasensory perception is always translated in our time-space dimension. So we speak about cause and effect, which is here. We apply it to all the other invisible dimensions. Cause and effect cannot exist there because cause and effect needs linear time, needs something before something. So how can the other dimensions not have cause and effect? Because people think if this happens there, this happens here, or this causes that. So how can there be a dimension or multiple dimensions, or how can the real reality behind everything be without cause and effect? You know, the mind has difficulty comprehending that. That's why all the books that refer to things beyond the sensory like when you speak about death, life after death, reincarnation, and all that, you're always speaking in cause and effect and in time space.
Yes.
In reality, that's only our interpretation. In reality, there's no time space there. So what happens there? If you say life after death, that means you're speaking about the other dimension having a linear thing. Death must come first and then life after death. But in a dimension where you don't have our time space, you don't have before and after. So it is the other life. It's the other life, not the one after death. But that means if time space there does not have our linearity, and we spoke about that in the courses when I think in the foundation courses you study that there you have the stacked time. It's like you have all the pages of your life that are bound. So there's a linear relationship, cause and effect between every page and the following one. All of a sudden in the other dimension, they're unbound and they're scattered everywhere. And there's no time at all. So how do you navigate in this other dimension? Through resonance. Resonance is the universal law beyond our sensory dimension. Resonance means anything that happens in your emotional or mental, anything that stirs in there will take you to a page that is in resonance with this thing that has been activated in you. Anybody thinking about you will take you there. So it's just jumping between pages in the future, in the past, anywhere. You can go anywhere in those stacked pages because there's no physical time space, there's no linear time space. So think of it that way. How come then I'm speaking about afterlife if I'm always there? Meaning that in this body of yours, in this house, there are two people living in there. There is the sensory you that you identify with Guy and I identify with Ibrahim, but there's my roommate. You see, the roommate who lives with me in the apartment. Unfortunately, I'm so interested by all the things that happen outside and all that I have no time to speak to my roommate at all. I'm not even aware that the roommate lives with me in the same apartment, you know. And I'm so excited by the material things I see that my whole concentration awareness goes towards the physical dimension, and I'm not aware that my roommate has a universal way of seeing things that is much more beautiful and much richer than my very limited sensory perception. But my ego makes me think that my sensory perception is the greatest thing of all, you know, and my roommate is nothing. I mean, yeah, he can sit in his room, you know. I leave him in his room. I'm not really interested in speaking with him, you know. If I say hello to him, he'd be very happy to come and converse with me, give me some ideas, but I usually ignore my roommate, you know. But what I must understand, that I'm only, in reality, I think I'm the owner of the house and he's just a roommate. In reality, he's the real owner of the house and I'm just passing by in that house. I move out and it's the house belongs to him, to the roommate. So I'm an intruder in there. I live with the owner of the house, whom I don't acknowledge even, you know. So that means that the moment my senses die out, I'm not going anywhere new. There's not an afterlife starting. No, I'm just, at death, what I'm doing, I'm just, instead of looking at the things here, I go and sit with my roommate. And I join his perception. I leave mine and join his. And then I become a timeless, eternal being that I always was. You see? Yeah, because you are there all the time. So imagine that you are, now look at this extrasensory area of your roommate. Your roommate is a sort of a multidimensional thing. He has aspects that are more individual, aspects that are more collective, aspects that are universal, aspects that are forward in time, aspects that are back in time. All is an eternal presence with the roommate, because there's no time and space as you know it. It's all right in front of the roommate. What will happen in 1,000 years on Earth, what has happened back forth, and everything is there. So this feeling of life going forward or something like that is only a translation of the sensory ego that has to timestamp, that has to personify everything and timestamp it and look at it in its own linear time. So imagine that you're not going anywhere. You're already there. See, you're already there, but you are not listening. In ancient times, and I think I take Jung's categorization in the book, where I say primitive man and ancient man. Now these, at the time, had the focus of perception in the right brain. So they were, imagine the ancient Egyptian now, or the ancient Sumerian. You see that they have lots of what you call them, erroneously call them gods. You know, so many pictures of deities and gods and things like that. So you start translating them in your way of thinking. You say, for example, these are extraterrestrials who came, brought civilization to man. These are that, these are that. You keep giving them different identities. But in reality, look at it that way. When a person is focused in his right brain perception and his left brain perception starts budding, he sort of personifies all the forces of nature that he sees and interacts with in his right brain because he's still there. So this, all the pictures you see and the reliefs and the statues are not extraterrestrials, are not things, no. It's the human being of that time, the species of humanity interacting with the forces of nature as if they coexisted with them. They lived with them. So the forces of nature that are out there, you being part of nature, in the primitive man interacted with them on his subconscious level unconsciously. He interacted with the forces of nature without really give and take with them. But as ancient man developed, as the left brain developed a bit, the left brain starts personifying those forces of nature. So all of a sudden, there are other beings living with you on Earth. And this is what you see in all the reliefs and documents and all that. It is the forces of nature personified by the slow budding left brain perception. And they're there interacting with you because your focus is in the right brain. Although the left brain started, your focus is in the right brain. So to you, these are the people you live with. Every action you do, they are working with you. So in every action, you sort of ask the helper that knows best in this action, and 2, 3 helpers from different things. That means the forces of nature, the life force. So we go back to the life force here. The life force plays a part in every activity you do. So anything you do, let's say you produce a pot, you produce a plate, you do it in such a way that the products of humanity have life force in them. Now, because I was not doing it myself, I had 3, 4, 10 other helpers from the forces of nature doing it with me. and forces of nature have life force. So every product I do is alive. So imagine a plate, a pot where you put your food, where you do something in ancient Egypt, had life force. The one you have today is dead. It even depletes life force. So this is the ancient paradigm where we were aware of our place in nature and all those life forces that inhabited. That's why in Egypt you don't call them gods, they call them netters, NTR. And netter is the root for the word nature. Later in languages, we don't know exactly what, they used to write without vowels. So they wrote it NTR. So it could be notor, could be nature, could be neter, could be. So they usually put an E because we don't know the vowels. But it's actually the root of nature. So they knew very well that those, what we call gods, are actually the forces of nature personified in such a way that they became interactive friends and partners of humanity. That is why they created those great civilizations for a long time. Now, how did those civilizations demise? Because at a certain time, modern man emerged. That means the more people interacted with physical things, the more the left brain started analyzing things, the more it gained power. Because the more the sensory perception worked, the more information it got. The ego started getting bigger, more inflated, and all of a sudden it pulled the focus of consciousness in the left brain. When this happened, this is what I call in the book the great shift. Like we teach in our courses, your perceived reality is projected from within you. Now, if there is a great shift in your perception, in the focus of perception from right to left, that means there's a great shift in your world, in reality. So all of a sudden now, the world is not the same anymore. So when the world is not the same anymore, the left brain here, when the focus goes to the left brain, the first thing it does not understand what's happening on the outside, it closes the door. And we reach a level where we are actually afraid to open the door and look in all those unconscious levels. So that was the moment that ancient civilizations had to die out, because now all the friends, imagine all the forces of nature, all what you call gods and netters and everything that were an integral part of your everyday life. Imagine comes a situation where you shut them out of everyday life, where you shut the forces of nature out of everyday life, where you shut the life force out of everyday life. Now, that's the birth of the great modern man, you see. And so the ancient civilizations had no hold anymore, because their hold in our perception was in our awareness of the right brain perception, of the extrasensory. Now, when you lose that awareness, you cut the string between you and all those dimensions. And so all the civilizations sort of flew off, went away. They had no hold here in Earth. Now, back to a future means we must find a way of bringing back life force and the forces of nature into our life. And it's very simple, when I say all the products of modern technology are dead products. I mean, we don't have the concept of life force, because we decided now when we started modern technology, measurement became our new god. So when you want to measure something quantitatively, you had to take the human being out of the formula, because he's too subjective. You want to be objective. Now imagine you build a new science by keeping the human being out of the formula. Then you build a fantastic civilization. But ultimately, it is at the expense of the human being because he was always out. It gives him a lot of leisure and pleasure, but he's not part of it. Because what do I mean by human being part of the formula? I mean that in the formula, there should be a variable that has to do with human life force or human subtle energy. The quality of human subtle energy should be a variable in every product of human technology, like the ancients. Now, once you take that out, now you have a living body of the earth, living civilization, and every day you're putting dead matter into it. All the products of modern technology are debris, like throwing junk, like throwing dead junk in a living body. Now, the ancients, when they put their products out there, they connected them to the energy of life. They connected them to the life force. So every product of the human being became actually part of the natural design language. It became part of nature. When they built a house, when they built a pot, when they built a pyramid, whatever they built a temple, they did it in such a way to connect with the life forces. That's why they always said you sort of invoke the letters to your house, to your thing. That means it is alive. And to show that, you might tell me, I mean, this is too absurd. How can we bring life force into modern technology? Actually, it's very simple. In biogeometry, for example, we look at how the products of nature connect to life force. So we get one of those, wooden statues, the wooden statues we use for art. And then you take your pendulum and go on that wooden statue and try to find any indication of life force in there. You'll be astonished because you are going to find all the chakras on the statue. Because the chakras, in reality, they are sort of the energetic, subtle energy centers of shape. So look at it that way. If you wanted to contain water or tea, like I have here, my cup of tea, if my cup was flat, I'd have tea all over myself. Yeah, it has to be shaped to contain tea. Now, look at it another way. Now, what if I want to contain something not physical? What if I wanted to contain emotional energy? What if I wanted to contain mental energy? What if I want to contain spiritual energy? Because I want to have a being that has all those things to be alive. I need to have all those things in there. How do you contain them? You contain them through a geometrical resonant language where every shape and every angle of any natural thing resonates with all the levels. And by resonance, you contain them. Like the antenna. When you want to contain a certain wavelength, you make an antenna in that wavelength. So when the wave passes by, you get a standing wave around the dimension of the antenna. Now, the body is the same thing. Every angle of the body, the whole shape. I mean, the natural forming process in nature creates shapes that contain all the levels. Otherwise, you couldn't say they are natural shapes. Natural shapes are designed to contain all levels. So in order to understand, there are many philosophies speaking about chakras from the emotional point of view, from the mental point of view, from the spiritual point of view. Okay, all those, but if they must have a hold on the physical. Somewhere in the physical, they must be anchored. And the anchoring happens through the design of the physical body. So I get my wooden statue, and I can actually, on the wooden statue, increase the activity of any chakra. So by moving the hands or the arms of the wooden statue on the level of any chakra in the statue, all of a sudden that chakra is enhanced. It starts radiating much stronger. So I can actually make my statue do healing work for me. You know, I'm an old man and I'm a lazy man, so I have this wooden statue as an assistant. I don't have to pay the wooden statue. I don't have to feed it. The wooden statue just does the healing for me. But this is the secret of all, let's say, forms or shapes in nature. They are shaped to contain centers or chakras that are multidimensional vortices, and the multidimensional vortices of the chakras, they suck in all the levels, the higher levels, bring them into the body. Now the question is, how can a statue that on the physical level is not alive contain all the higher forces? That is what the ancients understood. I can make my human products in such a way that although they are not alive in the physical, like on the physical level, but they're actually alive on all other higher levels.
Wow.
So they can, so they can transmit that energy to me. So when I need healing energy, I stand in front of the statue. It can transmit all those levels to me because it has them. So, and even on mental levels, you know, they used to go in front of the statues for healing. Those statues promoted health and prosperity in their surroundings. Those statues sometimes give oracles, you know, telepathic oracles to people. Some even ancient stories tell you that with very high energy in the oracles, sometimes the statues would vibrate or things like that, because this means the secret of the natural forming process is in connecting to all the higher dimensions. Now, imagine what if we used the principles of biogeometry, and that's what we did in biogeometry. We created a design language that recreates the central quality of the vortex, of the connective vortex that we call BG3. So now, if I put through the biogeometry design language BG3 in any human products, means I'm connecting it to life force. Means that that product can transmit life force to me. Meaning that this life product has, this living product has become part of the natural, let's say, environment of the earth. Now, my products of humanity would actually become one with the life of the earth. They become alive through the life of the earth. Because to understand that, you don't have to have a moving object so that it's alive. A mountain is alive, a rock is alive. I mean, look at why do you sometimes go in sacred valleys or sacred mountains to replenish yourself? You know, the sacred mountain has all the components of life force, although it is rock, it's not moving, but it has enough life force to give you. So biogeometry comes in and tries to bring this new design language into modern technology, so that modern technology connects to life force. So that we could imagine if in the age of information, if electromagnetic radiation carried life force with it, and that's what we do with biogeometry. The information age, instead of being something that's going to kill us, it's going to be something that's going to heal us. It's going to take us to a future. This is sums up a bit my way of looking at things. But I'll leave it up to you now to
No, that is
discussion and ask me any questions and all that. I spoke long enough.
No, that was incredible. And every time I was about to ask the question that was appearing, you were answering it for me. So I just sat here listening to everything you just shared. Unbelievable, unbelievable. And there's so many things that occur to me then as you speak. So even with modern technology now, then what you're saying is that we don't. It's not a case of eradicating it. You know, anti-Wi-Fi, anti-5G, or what. You know, smog, electromagnetism. It's been able to work with it because, as far as I can see, it's not going to go away. And what you're saying is that we're able to work with this and entwine it with the life force that's ever present around us. But we
You
are
know,
so
wisdom. Yes,
pardon?
wisdom is not in eradicating modern creativity. Wisdom is guiding it in the right direction. And that's what we should do, not eradicate all those achievements of humanity or take a stand against them. No,
100%.
we
Yeah.
can lead them in the right direction and achieve, if we do that, you know, we can achieve a much higher level than all ancient civilizations.
It's mind blowing. Like, I mean, I've been using your technology for several months and you notice the difference over time. You really do. You know, the question I have then is, with such a strong egoic left-minded civilization, and I had to be slapped across the head kind of to wake up to more possibility than I could see with my five senses. Once we wake up to the fact that we are intertwined with this life force energy, and you know, you spoke of the vital energy, the emotional energy, the mental body, you know, the spiritual aspects. There are so many of us that are not even aware of that, and we can even contain and work and heal with that. Do you think that people are opening to this technology and are opening to look at this? Because that is
Well,
my hope. That is why I do this podcast every week and do what I do, because I want to get this information out to more people.
well, Guy, let's look at it in a very, very simple way. Now, ancient humanity imitated animals when it discovered that there are places on the earth that have special energetic feelings. And so they imitated the animals, they went there and started interacting with the healing aspect of those places that became the sacred power spots of humanity. Now, the human being has interacted with those sacred power spots since he arrived on earth, and we have to look at it that way. The power spot or the interaction with the earth power spot is the most important factor that has shaped the history of humankind. Because if you look at our interaction with it, whether in community planning, whether in city planning, whether in beliefs, whether in religions, whether everything was centered around sacred power spots. In ancient times, the sacred power spot of the community was the place where the people gathered, where healing occurred, where burials occurred. It played a major part in the belief and rituals of society. Was this interaction with the sacred power spots. So this interaction with the sacred power spots means what? Means interacting with the vortex of the power spots, which is very strong, multidimensional vortex. And when you interact with it, all the chakras of your body get amplified and activated, and you become anchored in the energy of the earth, the flow of energy of the earth through you that has been sometimes hampered by some obstacles here and there that might not be very fluid in one aspect of your being. All of a sudden, through the sacred power spots, everything gets cleared, you know, and your connection with the earth is full. And that's why when this happens, you become a spokesman of the earth, meaning that all of a sudden the messages from the earth are translated through you depending on your abilities. For example, you might stand up and all of a sudden say a poem, let's say, comes out in your mind, you're saying a poem. Somebody else does it in posture. He starts, or a dance, or a song, or whatever. All of those actions of creativity, could be a painting, could be a building. All those actions of creativity are different ways of manifesting the message of the earth.
Wow.
In those, so when we say, who taught humanity? Who brought civilizations to humanity? It's all those higher levels through the earth being that you learn to build a civilization. And the interaction with the power spots, in ancient times, when people traveled from point A to point B, and you can still find that in many primitive cultures today, they never went in a straight line. They went from one power spot to the other because they usually had a little shrine there, a monument, a temple. So they would go from one to the other and then in the next, and through what they call the pilgrimage roads, the connective ley lines between the power spots. They would walk on them because they would replenish their energies. And so the whole concept of interacting with the earth was somehow through power spots. And even, in Luxor in Egypt, we have a very good example of such an interaction because, people think that when a religion comes, it sort of replaces the older one. When Judaism came into Egypt, it replaced the ancient Egyptian religion, although Judaism erupted from ancient Egyptian thought, but they think that it replaces it. Then when they think Christianity came, pushed away Judaism and placed itself there, then they think Islam came and pushed itself there. But instead of looking at such things, instead of thinking, why did this practice come in the place of this practice? Why not in another place? It doesn't have to do with religions replacing each other. It has to do with the community linked to the power spots. So you find in the Temple of Luxor, where you think that those religions were against each other, in the middle of the ancient Egyptian temple, you find a church. And beside the church, in the middle of the temple, you find the mosque. Now, why should a community who wants to build a church go inside an ancient Egyptian temple and build it in there when they are supposed to be thinking in a different way? They thought they were monotheistic and they thought the ancients were polytheistic. In reality, the ancients were monotheistic too. Everybody was monotheistic because I'll come to this point a few minutes later, but those three religions built their edifices right there. Why? Because the sacred power spots to the community was more important than any belief.
Wow.
Any belief should fit, any belief should fit into this connection with the higher dimension, because the connection to the higher dimension was actually the goal of every belief. So if you have a new belief coming in, put it where it is connected. Don't put it where it is disconnected. So this is the way that the power spots played a role. Now, until maybe a few hundred years ago, all the churches, the temples, the synagogues, and everything that we built were built on sacred power spots. But who visits the local church now? Who visits the local mosque? People don't visit it. But just imagine, you don't have to go and do all the rituals. Going back into the connection of the power spot. You can go, the power spots are not only where you have a church or a mosque or something. The power spot can be an oasis. You see, anywhere where you have natural springs coming up. So humanity was connected to power spots. Now, when you're connected to power spots, meaning you're connected to the earth. Now, you lose the connection to the spot. We become too busy now. And what's a power spot? I mean, let's, instead of, I mean, visiting it or putting some monument on it, no, I take it away and build an amusement park, or I build a bank, or build what, because it doesn't play any role in my consciousness anymore. But this means that the connection of the earth doesn't play any role in your consciousness anymore. It is this thing, and you're disassociating yourself from the earth. So we have to sort of rebuild the connection of humanity
Reconnect,
to the power spots in nature. When you do that, what happens? This resonance with the power spots will activate all your chakras, means healing on emotional, mental level, means protection from such things like pandemics and all that we're suffering with now. You know, the way we're doing the COVID is just the beginning. It's not the end, it's the beginning of an era. It's the beginning of an era where humanity is losing immunity, where nature is losing immunity. And it will get worse and worse and worse if we don't sort of change our way of thinking. Imagine reviving the connection to power spots is such a very simple thing. Going on Sunday, walking in your nearest power spot, your nearest area, your nearest mountain, your nearest valley, or just going near the church or something like that. Reviving those simple traditions might reconnect humanity to the earth. And what it does, it will rearrange and harmonize your emotional mental makeup. You will automatically change without being aware of it. You know? And with biogeometry, when you use all those biogeometry solutions, if you're wearing a medallion or something like that, you are into the subtle energy aspect of the power spots. So biogeometry is unconsciously making this connection. I'm bringing back the power spot into your body through the back door. So yeah, I'm bringing it in you. If you see, if you don't go to the power spot, I'm bringing the power spot to you right there, you know.
I know so we're getting lazy as a society, and it's certainly a great way to start. That's for sure.
Yeah. So you say, I don't want to go to the power spot. Okay, here's the power spot. Take it. You know. Yeah. So every product of modern technology becomes a power spot. You know. This is the way we try to. This is what the world back to the ancient paradigm. You know.
Oh yeah. I mean, once you start to have those experiences and you feel that centering quality and you feel that realignment and that connection, you want more of it. You don't want to go back to the old way. It's like the world's greatest gifts are there all along, and we're just not allowing ourselves to have a taste of it and come back to that.
When you discover all of a sudden that your roommate is a great friend.
Yes.
So all of a sudden you have a great friend right there living with you in the house. You know, you discover this, my best friend is living with me, that I didn't acknowledge through all those years. So you start speaking to your friend and find he has very interesting stories to tell you. He has very interesting things. So instead of watching television, you enjoy sitting with your roommate because you find he's such a great friend. And when this happens, you know, this discovery of this great friend within you, and slowly as you age, you will get the impression, is that great friend really me, and my sensory perception is an artificial me? Is my sensory perception a mask that I'm wearing that makes me not see the real me in the mirror? So you start asking yourself all those questions as you age, you know.
And what do you feel it is? From all your experiences in life and your knowledge, I mean, it's incredible. Like, what have you pondered on? What conclusions do you come to?
Well, I feel, you know, that it's very strange what I feel, because imagine in my new book, I'm explaining a bit that how a line is created. A line means the beginning of duality. You start at a point, you draw a line. Now, we have studied how the line has origins in invisible dimensions, emotional, mental, and how it comes and draws it. But when we go into the real aspect of the pulsating universe, when you draw a line, it is actually a central pulse that pulsates like that, creates the line, and then you associate with the beginning and ending of the line. But the line is nothing but a pulse, you know, a pulse and backwards.
Wow.
Now that means, that shows us, but I'm going a bit too far now into some things I explain in the book, but that shows us that pulse meaning the beginning and the end are two aspects of the same thing. You know, because a pulse, and they both go, the center creates beginning and end and then goes back to the center. So it creates, as they go further apart, you create the beginning and the end. And now as you walk along, every step forwards, the end comes a step nearer. So that means the quality of the end affects every step you go forward a bit more with every step. It's like having a goal, you know. If you have a goal, you walk towards that goal. And the more you approach that goal, the more that goal is pulling you towards it. And so this is what's happening. When you approach a central point, the beginning and the end come together in a way that makes a lot of sense, that show you the reality, and all of a sudden you can glimpse through the multi-dimensional whole into everything. So this is the feeling I have. It's like, you know, I'm speaking, it's as if I'm living that. I'm not telling you, if I speak all what I'm saying now, if you ask me, where are your references? Who said that? Can you? It would be absurd, because there's no reference in the right. It's the language of the heart. It's how I feel. It's my perception. And so what I'm saying is what I feel. And now that, you know, we don't live forever. So all the BioGeometry community, starting with my children who are leading the show now, they came and said, what if you go away and take away with you this whole world from which you give us a few small pieces? Are you planning to take it away with you? Do we have to discover it from the beginning? Or will you sit and put it in a book for us? Even if we don't understand part of it today, we'll understand it tomorrow. But it has to be put there. We want to see the world that you live in. We want to see it in all its detail. So that's what I did with the new book. I put everything out there. I put it in that book. When you go into so many aspects, some people might think this man is totally crazy. he's really gone out of bounds. It's some people might see the truth in there. Everybody will see in the book what he is ready to see. So every time you read it, you might see something else. But at least my duty is to publish it, put it out there, put the book out there. And so if ever I'm gone, I mean, not saying if ever is wrong, because the end is programmed in the beginning. So that means the only thing that is for sure is the end. That's the only gateway. And it's the happiest moment in your life. Imagine you are sitting in this home looking at your roommate and admiring all the possibilities he has, the way he sees the universe, the way he sees everything. You're admiring what this roommate has. And you know that you are going to become the roommate. So imagine I'm here, but I am sure, 100% sure, so are you, so is everybody, that you are going to become the superhuman roommate. It's just a matter of time. When you really feel that, you can't wait to become the roommate. You can't wait, because if I'm telling you there's a superhuman in you waiting to emerge, you can't really wait to become that superhuman. And that is what happens at my age.
Amazing.
But you see, before you leave, put it in a book.
Yeah.
Put it in a book, and then you're free to go. You know,
Wow.
when I tell my children, okay, I think I'll write that book and retire. You know what they say? You think you're allowed to retire? Retire what? Hey, you're going to work for another so many years.
Yeah, they won't let you.
Yeah, what do you mean retire? What do you mean rest? There's no rest for you. You have to continue working. So you feel, you feel the end, you want to be that superhuman there, but at the same time, you feel you still have a duty here to do before you go through that magnificent doorway.
Incredible. The one question occurred to me, do you think or feel then, you know, as we come closer to the end of our life and we're reuniting with our roommate, do you think that that's the journey of life, of that reconnection, that from that separation? Because they say the more separation, the more suffering. And I often ponder about these things, that we're journeying back to that, to reunite, and all the teachings and learnings that lead us there to that point.
You know, we said that cause and effect only exist on the physical dimension. In the other dimension, you have resonance. So in the physical dimensions, you build the objects that you're going to use to enter into resonance with in the other dimension. So going into the physical dimension is really putting or giving the tools that for the other dimension, giving some information that is used that causes certain paths of resonance in the other dimension that you cannot do once you're there. Because here you have a conscious mind, cause and effect, that can do things that you need in the other dimension. You need, for example, you need values. You need values in the other dimension. Now, values are not created through imagination. Values are created, they're anchored through physical action. You know, people think that beliefs are goals, religions are goals, and things like that. In reality, they're not. They're means of achieving excellence of action. So excellence of action is the thing that anchors things on the other side. So you have to have excellence of action to anchor values on the other side. So through action, they are anchored. Because on the other side, it will be like a dream. You will not have this freedom of choice. You will not have this type of awareness you have here. You know, in a dream, you find yourself going through resonance from one aspect to another. You don't have full control. So when you don't have full control, you cannot practice ethics, or you cannot evolve ethics. They're there already. What you took with you are there. So the evolution happens here. Action, you try to reach excellence of action to sort of have the excellence or the highest level of ethics, that ultimately, when your action goes away, your roommate takes the ethics with him. So you need here to anchor for excellence of action. Physical action is important.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. I'm just looking at the time. We've been, I can't believe how quickly this podcast session has gone, and I feel like there's another 5 podcasts in here, Ibrahim. Unbelievable. I got 2 questions left for you before we wrap it up. The first one is when is your new book due out? Because I'm going to be extremely excited to grab a copy.
Well, I finished the text already,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm starting with like I said, 480 diagrams. Many, of course, about 300 of those diagrams exist already in all the slides, the pictures, the things that we have, or diagrams of our tools, diagrams of things like that. Those we have already. So I have about 300 of those diagrams there ready. Dorea is sort of sorting them out for the new book and putting the ones she has to. So I'll be left with about 150 to 180 hand-drawn diagrams. You know, I'm not a man of writing. You know, I've been born drawing,
Of course.
design.
Yeah.
So I feel in the book, writing is like somebody binding my freedom. So now explaining what I wrote in diagrams and pictures and things like that, if I could start drawing sketches and sketches and sketches, I'll never finish, but that's where I'm happiest, you know, drawing. So I think the time schedule I put for me is we will have all the drawings ready by the next 3 to 4 weeks maximum. And so the book will go to the editor, and the editor might take a month and then put it on, we put it on Amazon. So let's say 2 months from today, sometime in May, let's say it will be on Amazon.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, they say a picture says 1,000 words, don't they? So there'll be a lot in there. Please let me know when the book comes out, because I'll be sure to share it with everyone here.
Dorea is already telling me from now, you know, she says, I'll give you 1 month to rest after the book is published, but then you have to start making new high-end courses, going through and explaining everything in the book with practical experiments and things like that, so that people can really understand all the concepts in the book when we make videos and things like that. So she says, now you finished writing. Now, when you finish drawing, I'll give you time to relax, and then you start recording. We do videos. So I tell her, okay, I'll take a month holiday somewhere and then start my video. So let's hope by May the book should be out.
Amazing, amazing. Well, I'm so happy to hear all that is still to come from you, honestly. And like I said right at the start, your work and your family's work and everything you've done has certainly been impacting me here. It's trickling out into Australia as well. I've been telling as many people as I can about it as well who are ready to listen. So it's incredible. I have
You're
one
part
last.
of the BioGeometry family now. I mean,
Yes.
you joined the courses, so you're an integral part of the family.
Yeah, well, it's great to be welcomed in. I have one last question for you, and I ask everyone on the show this: is with everything we've covered today, is there anything you would like to leave our listeners to ponder on?
Well, all I would like to ask the listeners to is look inside you and try to find the other, your roommate. Now, how do I'll give you a few tips. How do I increase the connection with my roommate? Because if my right brain consciousness is connected to my roommate, so all activities that take me out of the analytical left brain consciousness will bring me into the right brain consciousness. Now, an important thing in right brain consciousness is that this holistic aspect of this consciousness. You know, left brain consciousness is analytical. It divides things more and more and more. It's analytical. Now, right brain consciousness is holistic. So the right brain consciousness sees everything in creation as a unity, and the diversity are just components of that unity. But left brain consciousness sees diversity, that it keeps splitting more and more. It doesn't see any underlying unity. But the right brain sees this unity. That's why primitive man and ancient man didn't need a modern religion to tell them about monotheism. You know, imagine trying to teach your dog or your cat monotheism. Your dog or your cat is living in the universal unity. So how can you? So the ancients had this monotheistic. They saw everything in relation to everything. Now we've shut the door and we want to go back. We know that the door is not completely closed. It opens sometimes. For example, women have to have the door partially open all the time, because women have to let in the forces of nature in order to preserve life. You know that when a child is in distress, if it was up to us, I, as a man, would wait till I hear him move, and then maybe open my eye and see if he's crying, or let's say, is he just turning around, or is he in distress? By the time I figure it out, he'll be long gone. But a woman has to open her eyes a few seconds before the child feels the problem, even before. That means she thinks out of time and space. She is ready before the problem occurs to preserve life. That means she has to have the right brain consciousness open so that the laws of nature can work on her anytime when needed to directly access life. So that's why we say women are more intuitive than men, because the creation needs to have one of the species in its control, you know. So in a way, that makes woman sacred. But I don't want to say that, otherwise all the women around us will start looking at us, you know, from up there. Okay, but this is so. But we can be entered into that state. So every time, let's say, you walk for a long time. Walking means alternating polarities. By alternating polarities and this rhythm, it will take you into a right brain holistic healing state. If you play sports, anything that you do harmoniously, it will take you there. You don't have to think anymore. If you have to think about your strokes when you're playing tennis, you're a bad player. You have to reach the level where the subconscious is there. Everything that, let's say, that you do, when you listen to music, for example, and it's taking you out of that, it takes you into this dimension. There are so many things in life. Now, the most important thing that we are not aware of, that creation does not leave us separated from the divine in a way, from this divine connection. I mean, it is not possible that the animal is connected and we are not, or is more connected than we are. Now, we have one thing that's very important. Every time we speak, what happens when we speak? You know, there's a law, like we said, the beginning and the end are related. So when you say a word of 3 letters, the last letter, the quality of the last letter is affecting the first letter, and the first letter is affecting the last letter, and all letters are affecting each other in both directions. What does it mean? Bidirectional effect. That means in a linear dimension where time goes, in a linear dimension, anything that keeps moving in bidirectionally in time, any effects will take you beyond. So humanity giving the power to speak words, by speaking, we are always connected to a higher dimension. Because the words go, anything that goes forwards and backwards in time will create a doorway, because now you're going beyond the constraints of time, you know. You're just going forwards and backwards. Like if you look at the sky, if you look at the sky, you activate your right brain consciousness. Why? Because the sky, you have all those stars in the sky. Now, all those stars that you see in front of you in the sky, each one is in a different time frame. One of them is 1,000,000 years away, and you can see it now. The other one is only 1 year away. And the other one is, but they are all in an eternal present screen. So when you look at this screen, you have millions of different time frames all on one screen. And so when you look at this screen, automatically those different time frames will take you beyond physical time. It will take you into right brain consciousness. So all those activities will take humanity more and more into right brain consciousness. We are not left behind like that, away from the connection. The connection will force itself upon us because, like I said, the end and the beginning are interconnected. So the rules and the laws of the end are active in the background from the beginning. This is, in a nutshell, in a big nutshell, of what I'm saying.
I'm getting taken away. I'm flirting between my left and right brain here.
Yeah, I get taken away. You know, in the right brain, I have no time concept, no time-space concept there. So sorry if I forget, looking at the watch in front of me.
No. It's totally fine. I'm hanging on every word you say, and I think it's a beautiful place to wrap up the show and encouraging everyone to give us space and allow ourselves to have that freedom to let go of the left brain and be there, whether you say whether it be nature or gazing at the night sky or doing some rhythmic sport or swim or it's certainly, I can certainly feel it when I'm in the left too much, and that's the first thing I turn to these days is something to get me out of there, and even using my voice toning I find really helpful as well. Yeah. I just want to thank you for coming on the show today and just sharing your time, your wisdom, and everything that you've imparted. I will be listening back to this podcast a couple of times, I promise you, because there is so much incredible information you shared today. And I just want to acknowledge you for all the work you do and the impact that you're having on many people's lives. And yeah, it's an honor to have you on the show, Ibrahim. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Guy, and it's really been my pleasure being with you, spending this hour with you, from Egypt to Australia,
Yeah.
spanning such a long distance. But it's good living in the air for an hour.
Totally. It's amazing. And for everyone listening as well, there'll be links below this show. So if you want to learn more about biogeometry, you can just hit the pause button, scroll below, and all the links will be there. And I certainly encourage everyone to look in and around. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.